I would like to call the South Lyon Community Schools Board of Education meeting on November 16th, 2020 at 7 p.m. to order. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Ms. Hanshaw.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
I'm here, Mr. Dashner.
I am here.
Mr. Schwegler.
Here.
Mrs. Ertel.
Here.
And Mr. Clark is on a call.
Hopefully he can unmute himself. Star 6, Mr. Clark. Okay. Jeff, can you manually unmute him, or Chester?
No, we do not have the ability to manually unmute. We only have the ability to mute them.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we will have him, well, he's on the call. If he can answer later, we'll add him to the list, I guess. Either way, we have a quorum. So with that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
All right, our next item is item number 3, public comments. We have about 50 tonight. So Mr. Abate is going to help me out because most of them are going to be read again. Okay, first up is Joseph Humphreys, and he states, your COVID case counts have been low and there's no reason to go virtual. We want our kids in person for schooling, not virtual. Also, some schools are reporting they are going virtual already, which hasn't been voted on, which is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Thank you. Next up is Allison Hingst, and she states, although I understand how important it is for kids to be in the classroom, as a parent of 2 elementary school children, I implore you to vote to go remote until after Christmas break. The rate in which our area's COVID rates are increasing is concerning, and the inevitable family gathering, which will happen over Thanksgiving, will only exacerbate that. Thank you for your time. Valerie Wedge states, please support our elementary schools continuing in-person instruction. The state supports in-person instruction up to grade 8. Chief Medical Executive Dr. Khaldun indicated that more than half of the outbreaks identified by the state at educational centers were linked to high school students. We have seen a vast improvement in our first graders' learning since return to in-person class. We have trust and confidence for our teachers and schools to be able to continue this plan safely. Thank you.
President Hanshaw?
Yes.
It appears that Randy Clark is on now and is able to speak.
Yeah. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. The star 6 wasn't working. So.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay, well, all right. So you are officially signed in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Rob Troyer. And he states, I want everyone to know that I personally come in contact with over 200 students and staff daily as a specials teacher. In the past 15 school days, I have personally come in contact with 5 positive cases that we know of. Please think about the health of all, and please be more honest about the actual amount of positive cases, not just the ones we think are contracted within the district. Ms. PJ Sedgwick states, with the understanding that the governor has closed schools for 3 weeks, please consider reassessing after that time. I have spoken to so many parents that their kids are truly struggling mentally with the virtual schooling. Their education is greatly suffering along with all aspects of socialization. The mental illness helpline has had a 65% increase since March. Please consider the mental health of these children. Mr. Jason Scott states, in-person school is the only option. Stop playing games with our children. Our teachers are doing great. Stop letting administrative bureaucrats dictate what is best. You have done a good job with the hybrid version so far. Let's keep it going. Do your job. Kim Craighead says, online learning is not one-size-fit-all approach. While online does work for my son, it does not work for my special needs daughter. The school tried their best to help her, but the reality is she doesn't process online learning at all. It wasn't until going back to face did she start progressing. The governor even acknowledged this and is in support of our middle and elementary schools staying open. If you don't want to hear us parents out, please hear the governor out. Michael Petrow says the governor not only did not put restrictions on elementary schools, she actually encouraged in-person schooling for elementary and middle schools. Our children need in-person schooling. Stacy Mosier says, I am very concerned how the remote learning schedule will work for parents that have full-time employment. Our experience with remote learning consisted of our daughter crying about the prospect of having to sit through 5 meetings and my husband and I trying to juggle assisting her to complete various assignments. She is learning how to read, so she is unable to complete this work on her own. What resources are available to parents that cannot accommodate this ridiculous 9 to 2:15 schedule? Stephanie Reif says, elementary hybrid must stay face-to-face. My 5th grader has benefited so much from this short in-person experience. The schools are proving to be safe and not transmitting the virus as outside the schools. The state mandated that high school goes virtual. That should allow for excess staff for the elementary. The administration and board failed our students by not attempting to open in August and September when it was safer. You should make every effort to provide our students the best learning possible. Cynthia Candela states, as a retired teacher and current guest teacher in Southline Community Schools, I think everyone has been doing a great job, teachers, custodians, staff, administrators, and students. I am a guest teacher because I enjoy being in the classroom and have grandchildren in the district. I am concerned about continuing to be a guest teacher as the spread of COVID-19 increases. I know the need for guest teachers is great, but as I sit in a room with 10 students, that is 10 families I am exposed to. I say we take a break. Michelle Roslinski states, these 4 weeks of in-person school have moved emotional and academic mountains for my 6th at Millennium Middle School, 9th and 11th grade kids at Southline East High School. I am asking to continue elementary and middle school and high school after 3 weeks with the hybrid plan versus full remote until January. The middle school kids need the in-person instruction and my 6th graders' grades have improved dramatically in the last 4 weeks. Do the hard thing but the right thing for our kids. Keep them in person 2 days a week. They need it to thrive. Joseph Kemig. I implore the board to allow our younger and most vulnerable students in K-8 to continue in-person education. The numbers of COVID do not justify keeping them home, and the negative effects on their education and mental health outweigh the near 0% risk to their long-term health. Even Governor Whitmer and her comrades are permitting continuing face-to-face for this group of students. Please use logic, not fear. The virus is fatal for 4 out of 1,000, which is an average of 2.6 comorbidities. Education is essential. Janelle Negri. I am begging you to follow the governor's orders and allow the elementary children to stay in school and get the education that they deserve. The children have done so well with the strict guidelines of wearing masks and reducing contact with others. The superintendent and the board really screwed up the start of the school year. They admitted that they did not prepare enough. Please, please do not screw this up again. This is your second chance, a chance at a redemption. Do it for the kids. Jennifer Props states, half-day model. What about a half-day model for K-8? Plymouth does this and seems to keep consistency for kids while limiting time in classrooms and less staff hours. Ms. Rachel Showerman states, please accept the administration's recommendation and move all grades to fully virtual through at least January 8th. It's obvious that the virus is exploding and spreading in ways that greatly disrupt in-person learning and threaten public health. Thank you for your leadership and the wisdom of caution during this pivotal moment in the virus's surge. Not only is it becoming a logistical impossibility to staff classrooms, the science supports that your actions will save lives. Okay, we have an anonymous person that we have to skip. Miss Renee Lasowski. ECC started before all the other schools in the district, and there has been no problems at the ECC. Whitmer spoke last night and mentioned how important it is for our young kids to be in school. Please keep ECC and elementary schools open. Virtual is not working. I know the teachers are doing what they can, but virtual does not work for my 4 and 6-year-old. They are struggling with school and mental health. They need to be in the classroom where they have been thriving. And Miss Gina Huckreber, by shutting down our district, you are robbing kids of basic education. The mental status when in school is positive and happy. When Hardy shut down the last couple of weeks, kids went back to sad and missing friends. They did not want to do homework online as needed. If the governor says the young students can continue, then we should. They need the teachers to learn from in person, or the school becomes another alternate world like a game. Kids learn from socializing in person. Don't make them miss out.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Our next comment comes from Rebecca Wagenschutz. Sorry if I got that wrong. We are all aware that there are so many unknowns during this pandemic. We have all had to make decisions based on what we feel are best and safest options in all areas of life for our families. Please allow us to have the opportunity to make the choice for our children regarding schooling options. We have all seen that we can safely attend school in person by adhering to the safety guidelines in place. Please offer this choice. Next is Andrew Kirby. Hello, we have a kindergartner in the district. First few weeks of virtual learning was awful. It was a constant struggle to get my son to sit in front of the computer multiple times a day. I watched the governor's talk last night, and she indicated how important it is to keep the younger kids in school. The district needs to give those the option of in-person school. Please, please, please let the younger kids stay in school 4 days a week. Thank you. Next is Allison Ritter. Move mountains to keep kids in the classroom. Schools all over the world are finding creative ways to do this. Dr. Faust, Oakland County Medical Director, said schools are the safest place for kids right now. Data refutes the notion that kids are super spreaders in school. It is clear they are not. I understand there are measures that seem out of your control. I'm asking you to use the ingenuity and think outside the box mentality we ask of our students to come up with a creative solution. Next is Andrew Moser. With the state of Michigan proposing no change to the in-person education for elementary and middle school students, will the board and central administration considering revisiting switching to remote learning? Science has shown that the safest place for our elementary students is in the classroom. Next is Jody Brzozowski. I understand some classes are being forced to go remote because of possible COVID exposure or staffing issues. I understand this is a challenge, but why not keep doing what we are doing? Keep the majority in school while managing like we have been. Instead, you decide to make it easier on yourselves and just pull the plug. Many are failing and depressed with zero plan from the board on how they will get these kids caught up that they have let down. This board has let the community down again. Tina Sharp is our next comment. Please do not close the elementary schools. My first grader needs to be in school desperately. I could say so many things, but please keep what is most important in mind, our kids. Our kids can rebound from this illness, but the structural development they are missing out from missing school will haunt this district for many years. It will not be the acclaimed SLCS we once were. If JK through second grade closes, I demand the firing of the superintendent. He does have our kids' best interests at heart. John and Diane Fawcett are next. We urge the board to continue in-person learning for students in the self-contained special education classrooms. For a nonverbal autistic son, remote school equals no school. His needs are significant enough that he cannot engage in online learning. The self-contained classrooms operated without incident for a month prior to the return of the rest of Hardy's student body. We realize this is asking for an exception for the few, but unfortunately, students like our son have exceptional needs. Next is James Morris. Thanks for everything you do to keep our kids safe. Our family also has the highest regards for the safety of the community. We have 3 kids in SLCS and have been nothing but disappointed in the lack of education with the remote learning system. If there was sufficient data to show the virus transmitted in our schools, then I would be in agreement with the closure. Since that is not the case, I fully support remaining open, as I can't idly watch the train wreck of remote learning any longer. Michael Rizzi is next. Based upon the recommendations of the governor, the state is only closing down high schools. What is the justification for closing down elementary and middle schools? Is this a money issue? How much money is saved when the entire district shuts down for 3 weeks versus how much money is saved for only shutting down the high school? What is the job titles of the staff that have tested positive for COVID? David Millenbach is next. In-person learning is the best interest of students when compared to virtual learning. Application and adherence to mitigation measures provided in this document and similar to those implemented at essential workplaces can help schools reopen and stay open safely for in-person learning. CDC, October. The AAP strongly advocates that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with a goal of having students physically present in school. American Academy of Pediatrics, November. Julie Casano is next. Why the decision to close schools for such a long time? Would it not make sense to close them for 2 weeks, same time as advised quarantine, and open them up again, which would give us some sort of reset back to the starting point? Gina Glasick is next. My biggest concern is for our special needs, special education students. They've already lost so much this year, and now it seems that they will continue to slide further behind. I, as well as many other special needs parents, have already seen growth in our children just over the previous weeks. It's heartbreaking that accommodations aren't being made for them during this time. Virtual learning just does not work for these students. I hope and pray you can find a solution for them soon. Next is Brian Sleek. I support the decision to shift fully remote instruction beginning Thursday, November 19th, 2020. On August 10th, when you did the return to school plan approval, Michigan had 637 new cases compared to 9,099 new cases on November 13th. Melissa Turner and Diane Dobrit are next. We're asking the board to consider keeping self-contained special education classrooms in person during this time. We teach early childhood special education, and our students have significant developmental delays. We feel that our students' needs are best met through hands-on learning and face-to-face instruction. Our classrooms have small numbers, and therefore social distancing and cleaning measures are easier to implement throughout the day, keeping both students and staff members safe. David Price is next. Please accept the proposal for remote learning. I'm a third grade teacher in the district, and since our return to face-to-face, I've had to move my class to remote learning twice. I can't express how disruptive this has been to my students' learning. The back and forth has toyed with student emotion, motivation, and engagement. Please provide my class with a consistent learning environment for the remainder of the calendar year, or until we can figure out a way to learn in person safely. Kate Rozowski is next. Members of the board, I urge you to reconsider fully remote learning for the elementary level students. As the governor stated, most cases in the state are not related to the elementary age group. It is unreasonable to believe that there wouldn't be any cases at this level. We have in fact dealt with them via quarantine and remote learning for specific classrooms. Please do not make such a sweeping decision across the district. Elementary students need to be in the classroom. Cynthia Bryant is next. I don't agree about shutting down the schools again. Both my kids are face-to-face, and it's been so beneficial for us that they are able to attend school. We consider this improving their education. Having one that get distracted and needs more social interaction, and one of our biggest concerns is about mental health. That is important for us as parents. We know it is a difficult time that we are facing, but we should consider this point too. Megan Murphy is next. Closing K-8 is not beneficial for our kids. Decision is not based on science, evidence, and trends within our community. Much like the first closure back in March of this year, our young kids need face-to-face interaction in order to be prosperous in their education. Do it based on class-by-class basis, not the whole district. Our own governor is recommending to stay in person. Please keep our schools open to allow our kids the proper education they need. Julian Sleek is next. As a parent of both high school and middle school children, I'm writing to ask that you support the administration's recommendation to move fully remote instruction through January 8th. It has become clear that although you have made a great effort to keep children and staff safe to the level, that the level of community spread proves that we must do something more. Ashley Bentz is next. Thank you for reading my comment. I am a special education teacher at Hardy and am concerned regarding a prolonged remote period for students in our CI program. I am hopeful that there can be some wiggle room for special education students to have the potential to come back sooner than 1/8/21 if it is deemed safe in some kind of capacity, whether that be appointments of one-to-one small group sessions, half classes, etc., based on student need. I want to be doing right by kids while also being safe.
Okay, you ready for me to take over again, Tony?
Sure.
Okay. Next is Mr. Alan MacArthur, and he states, I seriously hope that the board takes into account the recommendation of the governor's office and the MDH on the closure of high schools versus schools at the elementary levels. We all know that our youngest learners need the structure of the classroom. The elementary level has done a fantastic job of getting kids back in the classroom with very limited incidents. If we are following the science and listening to the experts, then there is no reason we should see a closure at the elementary level. Next up is Priya Ferrante, and she is a teacher, and she is going to be calling in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Priya Ferrante, and I am a choir teacher at Centennial Middle School. This is my 9th year teaching and my 5th teaching in the district. To be completely honest, this has been the most challenging year I have ever had in education. 6 weeks ago, when the secondary schools started phasing in students at 25%, the COVID cases were low, and I was excited to have students in my classroom again. Teaching virtually is a struggle for everyone, but somehow we managed. It wasn't perfect, but by the time students started to come back into the buildings, we had a foundation. Things seemed to be okay in the beginning, aside from the masks, complete change in curriculum, and only some of the students in seat. The overall energy from the students and staff was positive. However, within a few weeks, as the number of positive COVID cases rose, so did my fear and anxiety. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how our district is handling the ever-increasing rise in COVID-19 cases. As I'm sure you are aware, Oakland County changed the COVID-19 risk determination to an E, which is the highest level on the chart that provides guidance for in-person instruction. Beginning Wednesday, all high school students will return to virtual learning. But what about the remaining students and staff? A teacher I used to work with, who teaches elementary, was recently exposed and tested positive. Her entire class had to be quarantined. For the first few days, she experienced flu-like symptoms, but was quickly admitted to the hospital after her fever spiked to 104 and her pulse dropped dangerously low. This is a woman who was living an active and healthy lifestyle with no pre-existing conditions. Since then, her district was one of many in Oakland County to go back to a virtual setting for at least a few weeks. I realize that there are many stakeholders in making the decision of which delivery instruction is best and safest, but I feel that I'm being forced to work in an unsafe environment. Personally, I have minimized my risk of exposure to the virus as much as possible. Aside from work, doctor's appointments, and grocery shopping once a week, I do not leave the house. I don't see family. I don't see friends. Being 6 months pregnant, my immune system is already slightly compromised. The CDC is still unsure how this virus will affect unborn children. 4 days a week, I ask myself if today is the day that I contract the virus from a student or staff member and how it will impact my health and the health of my unborn daughter. Once again, I want to reiterate that I believe the best place for students to learn is in the classroom. But what is best and what is safest are two different things. Although I am but one voice, I hope it is heard tonight when I say that I am strongly in favor of temporarily returning all South Lyon schools to remote learning until the COVID numbers within our county decline. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next up is Megan Murphy. And she states closing K-8 is not beneficial for our kids. The decision is not based on science, evidence, and trends within our community, much like the first closure back in March of this year. Our young kids need face-to-face interaction in order to be prosperous in their education. Do it based on class-by-class basis, not the whole district. Our own governor is recommending to stay in person. Please keep our schools open to allow our kids the proper education they need. Emily Triklack. Elementary schools remain in person. Our children can't go in person and then online and back again over and over through the school year. Some schools, such as Bartlett, haven't had any cases, so why should those schools have to go virtual? It's already challenging enough to follow new and different protocols as compared to a normal school year. They're doing great following these protocols, and now to take them out of an environment that they just got used to. Christina Cobb states, could the board consider keeping self-contained programs in person? I am a special education teacher, and many of my students are not able to access the curriculum online because of the nature and severity of their disabilities. Many of the students within my self-contained classroom have limited verbal output. I have seen many of these students' language bloom since school has been back. When making your decision, please consider this group of extraordinary learners. Miss Crystal Springer. Hi, I'm a mom of 3 Pearson students. I also work as a lunch monitor in the classrooms this year. I 100% think we need to go remote. Today alone, we were short 2 lunch monitors, causing us to pull 2 paras from their students to help with lunch. We just do not have the staff needed at the moment to remain open. Kids aren't keeping their masks on. Parents aren't keeping kids home when they are sick. The list is endless. I hate to see this for my kids, but it needs to happen. Larry Lewis states, oh, wait, sorry. Ms. Springer, did you call in? Did you want to speak? Okay. Well, Ms. Springer, if you decide you want to call in, just interrupt me. Okay. Next was Larry Lewis, and he states, bottom line is there is little to no transmission within schools and no evidence of ongoing transmission. Schools are the safest place for our kids right now. Dr. Russell Faust, Oakland County, MD. Follow the science, except when the science doesn't say what we want. The result is more professional development days, more transition days. Our 180 days are dwindling. Have the kids attend into the summer so they don't fall behind. If the parents had a union, maybe you'd listen. Next is Kim Shaib. It's ludicrous that the board would shut down our entire school district for only a small amount of cases. You must consider the mental health of our children being stuck inside and the struggle our families are going through at home with 2 working parents. Depression and suicide are on the rise. Please use facts and common sense before voting. These kids are depending on you. Matt Sebastian. The American Academy of Pediatrics strongly advises in-person learning. They openly acknowledge we already are seeing negative impacts on children from the spring virtual curriculum. Based on the governor's recommendations, she and her advisors also support in-person learning at the elementary school level. The goal is not to eliminate risk, but rather mitigate risk. The schools acknowledge they have been successful in doing so. We should continue to treat it on a class-by-class basis. Megan Day states, while considering going back to remote, can we please think about the emotional and social issues this is causing our children? Can we think about keeping at least the elementary age and younger going? I personally think all kids should be in person full time, but the transition back and forth with the younger is incredibly hard for all involved. Please think beyond the virus and think more about the other issues this is bringing to the children you are supposed to be doing this job for. Miss Stephanie Hardesty. I'm a Sayer parent and chose the hybrid plan for my child. I did this knowing there could be classes shut down. Why does the district have to shut down when there has not been one case in a few elementary schools, only a couple at the middle schools? What are the neighboring districts doing to avoid closing down? The schools are the safest place for these kids. Do not live in fear. Give our kids a chance at in-person education if we choose. Virtual can be a good option. It should be just that, an option. Todd Slisher. We, my wife and I, wish to voice support for the administration's plan to move hybrid students to a fully virtual option at this time. We have 2 sons that attend Millennium Middle School. The current situation with increasing caseloads and higher positivity rates, including cases in the schools, now make it more dangerous than when school started the hybrid model over a month ago. We believe this is the right step to take, even though we wish our sons could attend in person. Thank you. Miss Amanda Berman. I want to take the time to thank those parents who have been so supportive of their students' teachers, myself included. This pandemic will not go on forever. I support remote learning, and while we may not agree on remote versus face-to-face teaching, we all want to see students successful. This is why we teach. Please keep the positive comments to us coming. They motivate us when we are teaching to blank screens with just colored initials trying to still make an impact. Miss Catherine Wells. Whitmer thinks it's important for K-8 schools to stay open, and European countries are keeping schools open. They know the importance of younger students remaining face-to-face. With bars, etc., high schools, and sports shutting down, that should help curb the climb without putting more stress on young kids and families. Where is the logic to close schools that haven't had cases? Why not just move a single room to virtual if there is a case? Please wait to see if closures help before being drastic to go all virtual. An anonymous. Mr. Craig Poet. School board COVID response. Mr. Poet, were you planning on calling in? *6 to unmute your phone. Star 6 to unmute your phone. 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 Okay, if you join us later, just feel free to interrupt. Next is Ralph Cortese. He states, regarding closure, the state of Michigan has indicated that 2/3 of all the COVID cases in schools are related to high school students. Further, the governor has indicated that elementary and middle school can remain open. It is going overboard when you halt in-person education at the elementary level for the hundreds, if not thousands of students, when only a handful have contracted the virus, probably from their homes. Perhaps the winter break will eliminate the breakout. Lauren K. states, teachers, take care of yourselves. You are doing an amazing job with an impossible job. I'm not excited about the shift to fully virtual, but I understand and support it and support you in doing what you need to do to serve your own families as well as your students. Thank you for everything you do. Miss Jen Myslinski, are you on the line? She wanted to speak in support of going fully remote until January 8th. Are you on the line? If you join us, just let me know. Oh, there's Mr. Poet again. Okay, so Mr. Poet writes, I applaud the efforts of this board and recognize the incredibly difficult decisions you are facing. No matter what you decide to do, a portion of our community will be upset. You will never please everyone. Thank you for your efforts to serve our school district. To a large extent, it is a thankless job. Just know that there are many parents who appreciate what you do and understand that any decision you make are made with the best interest of all of our children in mind. Thank you. Okay, Margaret Pierce states, we have to find a way to educate our kids at school. Remote learning does not work for elementary age children. These kids have done everything asked of them. They are not spreading the virus. They deserve an education. This year is going to look different. We all know that. If the true reason for canceling in-person school is staffing, get creative. Eliminate specials. Have AM class only to avoid lunch. Focus on reading, writing, and math. You are failing our kids by refusing to be innovative. And lastly is Miss Badish, and she would like to speak about in-person learning. Miss Badish, are you on the line? Oh. Wait, there's her comment. The hybrid model doesn't allow for safe or effective face-to-face learning. We should call it mask-to-mask learning. In-person students cannot get close enough for personal help, nor can we see each other's faces. The anxiety I experience trying to juggle both online and in-person while not getting sick is high. Students do not stay distant from me or each other. I am currently at home quarantined. We need a break. All right, that is our last comment for now. We will have another opportunity at the end.
I'm on now.
Oh, perfect. Go right ahead. Who is this
This
again?
is Jen Myslinski.
Miss Linsky?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Go right ahead.
Sorry about that. So I'm a teacher and a student, or teacher and a student, that makes sense. Teacher and a parent in the district. And I'm a support staff. And I just was calling in support of going fully remote. I've watched my colleagues in the classroom have to deal with quarantine students or them being quarantined, then having to teach their in-person students while teaching their quarantine students. I think that the amount of mental and emotional stress on our teachers is getting out of hand, not to mention the fact that cases are rising, whether parents want to believe it or not. I happen to be a teacher that has COVID now, and we've been very careful. My family does not see any family outside of each other. We don't go anywhere. We don't dine out. We don't have people over. We go to school, and that's it. And somehow we ended up with COVID. And my children had to miss school. I've had to miss 9 days away from my students. And that was a big interruption for all of us. And for that to continue for both teachers and students is far more detrimental than going fully remote. I think we need to look beyond just what remote instruction means for academics and see what it means in all other ways. And that's it. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And get better. Stay healthy or attempt to get healthy, I guess.
Thanks. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Okay. We are on to our next item, which is item number 4, approval of agenda. I would actually like to make the motion myself because I would like to move item 8A, which is the bond update. We would like to remove that and move it to our December 7th meeting. So can I get support for approving the agenda, removing item A with the bond update getting moved to December 7th?
I will support.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Hanshaw, supported by Mr. Dashner. Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
All right, I vote yes. Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Mrs. Zertel.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes.
And Mr. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 5 is approval of minutes.
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay,
I'll support.
do we have support?
I'll support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Clark, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Any questions or comments on the minutes from November 2nd, 2020 regular meeting? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
All right, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Zertel.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
And Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item number 6, approval of bills.
I'll move to approve the October 2020 prepaids, November 2020 AP board run, November 2020 bond bills, the October 2020 wires and ACH transactions, and the October 2020 revenue report.
I'll support. Maybe Carrie's frozen. I think she froze.
I say I'm back. Could you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh,
Now
I'm
you
back.
can.
Okay, who supported that? I heard Mr. Dashner motion.
I said I'd support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Schwegler. Any questions or comments on the bills? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Zertel.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
And Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Item number 7 is the Southline Community Schools Extended COVID-19 Learning Plan Reconfirmation. Mr. Archibald.
Yes, thank you, President Hanshaw, and good evening to the board and good evening to members of the community who are tuning in tonight. We certainly appreciate that. I just have a very short presentation. I believe we kept it under 10 slides, which is very short compared to some of our previous ones. I want to just make a couple comments, and I know people want us to get to it, but it really is important that we have the opportunity to just share a few thoughts. And that whether you have been spoken out in support of the recommendation, spoken out opposing it, or just simply had clarifying questions, I appreciate the feedback that has come in, not only over the last few days, but over the course of the last several weeks. Tonight's recommendation is, as much as I may believe in it, not one that I feel good about. I thought we had hit a sweet spot with our current plan. And while I still believe in that plan, I think the circumstances that we're experiencing need to take us temporarily in a different direction. Chester, if you would, please, the next slide. Again, I'll just go brief that. I'm not going to review this slide, but this simply highlights what our current plan is, the virtual pathway at both levels. And I think I just said I wasn't going to review the slide, and then now I'm starting to review the slide. So Chester, next slide, please. I'll start at the end.
Mr. Archibald, if you could, a brief review would be beneficial. I do not have the benefit of seeing the slides.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We'll back up. I appreciate that. Chester, could you back up, please? Again, at the JK through 5 level, we have the virtual learning pathway 5 days per week. And students in the hybrid remote model attend school in person 4 days per week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being remote. We started that hybrid in-person model on October 12th. At the middle school level, again, we have the virtual learning pathway, fully virtual 5 days per week. And we started a hybrid model, which we phased in, again, with a quarter of the students attending 1 day per week. And then now we are currently up to 50%. So half the students attend in person Monday and Tuesday, with their other half of the students attending remotely. And then who is in attendance flips for Thursday and Friday, with Wednesday being fully remote. And again, we started the 25% phase in on October 12th and moved up to 50% on October 26th. Mr. Chester, if you could move, please. Thank you. This highlights the recommendation. As you may know, the extended COVID learning plan was approved by Oakland County Intermediate School District previously, and the board is required to recertify the mode of instruction portion of that plan once per month, which is why we bring it back here tonight. What the information on this slide summarized in the communication that we sent out to families and staff on Thursday of last week. The virtual learning pathway, with the exception of a workday on Wednesday the 18th, remains the same. At the elementary level, the hybrid in-person remote pathway is being recommended that we move effective Wednesday, November 18th. I'm sorry, Wednesday would be a teacher workday. And beginning on Thursday, November 19th, all elementary students in that pathway would shift to fully remote. The fully remote model would continue through at least January 8th, with a possible return to the current model on January 11th. At the middle school level, again, with the exception of Wednesday the 18th being a workday, that model is relatively unchanged. And the hybrid in-person remote pathway, Wednesday the 18th would be a workday. Beginning on Thursday, November 19th, all middle school and high school students in the pathway will shift to fully remote. The fully remote model would continue through January 8th, with a possible return on the 11th. I would comment, because there was question about the additional workday. And I want to stress, while it is not our goal to reduce instruction, it is our goal to provide quality instruction. And you won't be able to find a teacher who is working in a remote environment in any district anywhere who will not explain to you, no matter what year they are in their teaching, that this is like their first year, and perhaps their first year with blinders on. And so the opportunity to add the additional workday is only to help our teachers be better prepared, and best prepared, I should say, not better, best prepared to provide a quality and continue to provide a quality remote experience for your students. This is a new world for them, and they need that time to do it well. I put a note at the bottom of this slide, the JK through 12, under this recommendation, all students learning remotely beginning the 19th of November, and programs that serve students with additional needs may be prioritized for early return to in-person learning. Next slide, please, Chester. This slide was referenced earlier. I apologize that it's blurry. It is simply a chart from the Oakland County Health Department. We are in what is currently the highest risk level at E. You will notice across the top where it references no cases in school buildings, buildings with known cases in staff and students, but no ongoing transmission, and buildings with evidence of ongoing transmission. And if you follow the matrix to where we have the yellow arrow, it is from this chart that I just shared. Again, it is simply a recommendation, not a mandate. But this chart from the Oakland County Health Department suggests that districts at this point would consider remote instruction for the entire district. Chester, next slide, please. This information also comes from the Oakland County Health Department. We receive updates on this weekly. Each color represents a different age band. I only covered the age bands for school-aged individuals. Across the bottom are the dates covered in those numbers. And then you will also see next to the dates a letter of the alphabet in parentheses, and that is the risk level that corresponds with that particular information. You will see if you look around, and again, the early dates that do not have a risk level, the county was not providing that determination prior to when it's indicated here. You will see a couple things by this chart. We have spent the majority of this school year, and certainly when we started our remote hybrid at level C, we were in level D for a very short period of time and have spent the last two periods on here at the highest risk level of E. And you will see on here, obviously, that over the past several periods, there is a noteworthy increase in cases across our entire county by each age group. Chester, next slide, please. Getting a little closer to home, the Oakland County Health Department also provides on their website a section that highlights cases, positive cases, and cases per 10,000. And it is by geographical area. So if you go to that particular tab and you click on South Lyon, it says by school district. That is simply the geographical area within the Oakland County portion. I'm sorry, the Oakland County portion of the South Lyon School District. And you can click on any other district within Oakland County for this similar information. Again, this information is updated weekly on Thursdays, and it also shows, and again, not only countywide, but now a little bit closer to home and within our boundaries, excuse me, as a district, an increase in both positive cases as well as cases per 10,000 in our area. Chester, the next slide, please. I want to highlight a few things just from our district. I think it is very easy to look at some of the numbers and look at a few cases based on the number of students or based on the number of staff. And I think we have to look at it in its totality. We've had 31 school associated cases from October 19th to November 15th. 31 in comparison to the number of students and staff we have is not a very large percentage. And to be quite honest, to look at it as a percentage it is not overly helpful, but rather to try and look at the impact. We have tried to isolate our closures or our moves to remote instruction by limiting it to either individuals and then to individual classrooms. And then unfortunately, we've had to do a couple schools, but we have tried to make those moves on a limited basis and keep the remainder of our program running as usual. We have had 10 classrooms move to fully remote this school year. 4 are currently at that state. And we've had 2 elementary schools we've had to move to temporary remote. 1 is currently still remote. The purpose for that closure is 1 was operational, and the other was a high level of cases and absences related to COVID-related absences. We've had 2 athletic teams we've had to withdraw from state tournaments due to the number of athletes being quarantined. Last week alone, just last week, with 11 school-associated cases, we had approximately 200 students quarantined and nearly 60 staff members quarantined, with just 11 cases. Yesterday alone, we processed 5 school-associated cases that resulted in another 90 individuals being quarantined. On the surface, these numbers by our total district, in terms of our number of staff and number of students, are low. When you start to look at the number of students quarantined, number of staff quarantined, and the impact on being able to maintain our instructional program, those numbers are not low. They are, in fact, impactful. I want to stress that all the comments, with the exception of perhaps the individual who encouraged me to step in front of a train via email, all of the comments coming in have extremely valid and important points with merit on both sides of keeping students in person or moving students to remote. There's absolutely no question about it. We want students in school. It's where we know they do their best academically, socially, and emotionally. It's where our teachers are best trained and best prepared to do the amazing work they do. No decision is on the basis that we don't want students in school. We want students in school. The factors leading to this recommendation tonight do impact the safety of our students and our staff, the operational impact and the strain on our system, and the opportunity to maintain continuity of our instructional and program. Our teachers did amazing work this past fall in the remote experience, and they did so under intense scrutiny based on last fall. And I remind you, they have only done what they've been asked to do and more. I have tremendous confidence in our staff and our teachers, our administration, and our support staff to continue to provide a quality engaging education for any of our students in any environment. But shortly I'll be making the recommendation. Chester, the next slide, please. This is simply a repeat of the slide earlier, which recaps the recommendation. I'll just leave it on the screen for a moment, but I won't stumble through it, reading it perhaps like I did last time. And then President Hanshaw, I think, and procedurally, is it best for us to read the background information from the board agenda and then provide the board an opportunity to discuss or ask questions?
Yeah, let's do that. We can read that and then we'll get a motion and then we'll move from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chester, if you wouldn't mind, you can take the presentation down, please. Thank you, sir. At the September 21, 2020 Board of Education meeting, the board approved the district's extended COVID-19 learning plan We are required to reconfirm once per month thereafter the instructional delivery method, along with reviewing the weekly two-way interaction rates. The administrative team is recommending shifting the hybrid in-person remote pathway to fully remote instruction beginning Thursday, November 19th, 2020. A fully remote model would continue through at least January 8th, 2021, with a tentative return date on or after January 11, 2021. Wednesday, November 18th would be a workday for teachers. Our weekly two-way interactions are included in the report and are well above the required 75%. Again, I know we will have discussion. The administration is recommending approval of the instructional delivery method as presented.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve, well, anything at this point, but at least this, so we can get moving, and then we can always rewrite the motion at a later date. But we need to get something started to have the conversation begin. So let me get a motion.
I'll move to approve the instruction delivery as presented.
Do we have support?
I'll support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Kennedy, supported by Mr. Dashner, to approve as recommended. I'm assuming we're going to have some conversation. So if I don't know if you want to raise your hand or just unmute yourself, and then I can call you that way. Ms. Hertel, you're unmuted. You want to go first? Or
Sure.
you don't have to. You were
attention
unmuted,
for
so
that.
maybe you knew you had something to say.
Oh boy. So I have multiple concerns on kind of both sides of the cliff, so to speak. You know, with the governor's ruling that the high schools are closed and only allowing the K through 8, and the fact that I've heard from many parents and many teachers for both sides going to remote and staying in person. I do feel that being in the school at the elementary level is very beneficial for the kids. I am concerned about the timing that we're coming up on, you know, with the holidays coming up, and just knowing from talking to people at my work, looking at people's Facebook pages, you know, there's a lot of large family gatherings being planned, travel being planned, which means you're going to have people exposed. So I guess my biggest concern is the week after Thanksgiving and, you know, cases spiking at that time. But one of my questions is, with the fact that the high school will be going fully remote, and I know from experience with my kids, they've had multiple classes where the principal is running from room to room, trying to keep tabs on the kids because the teachers are out in quarantine or teaching remote, and the fact that they can't find enough subs. So that's a concern. And I know the concern about closing or going to fully remote is based on the fact that we're just struggling significantly to put adult bodies in rooms to keep tabs of the kids. By closing the high school, could that perhaps take the small pool of subs that we have, push them into the elementary level where that particular issue is lessened? As well as, I don't know what obviously I have 2 kids at the high school level. I don't know what the issue, you know, I can't imagine there's the same issue at the elementary level, or else we would have heard about that significantly, where the principal's running from room to room and you have periods of time where the kids are alone. At the high school level, not necessarily such a big deal. You know, they're older kids, they can take care of themselves, but still there was multiple classes that my kids were in where they did not have an adult in the room. And part of that adult is to turn on the remote computer for that teacher that's teaching hybrid for the kids to be able to have instruction, which is not ideal. So the question is, you know, are we having that same kind of scenario at the elementary level? By having the high schools closed, does it allow for more subs to participate at the elementary level that would help mitigate some of the staffing issue?
Was that a general question, or would you like me to try to comment?
I
can
guess
do
if
both.
you have a comment on that, I don't know if that's a full-on, you know, available answer, just because I don't know if we have subs that are only able to be at certain levels of the school.
Yep. I'll add that one of the things is we do have non-teaching staff at all levels who are going into classrooms and covering, whether it's at any level across the board. I do know that that's happening. Also, with respect to our administrators at each level, I have not commented that they are now, along with our nurses, the main contact tracers as cases surface within our buildings. And so when they are hit during a day with a case or two, they are the ones who are spending the time with our nurses. They are reporting it to the health department, but in order to stay ahead of things, are engaged in the contact tracing and all the communication and follow-up. It would certainly make sense now, Mr. Child, to get back to your question, whether more subs would be available to go to other levels or not. Certainly, I would think to some degree that would be a reasonable assumption. I know Mr. Weber or Dr. Weber has told me recently that some subs have contacted and just said, because of the current circumstances, I'm just not working at any level, and we'll wait till things are better or different. So, you know, I would say there is a potential that could give us a few more bodies to work with, certainly. How many, I couldn't say.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else?
If I could give you an idea, just over the last 3 weeks, sorry, I know this is your discussion, but over the course, just today alone, district-wide, we had 10 teaching positions that were unfilled and 5 support staff positions that were unfilled, which meant there was internal coverage throughout the day. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, from a teaching staff perspective across the district, from the information I have from our administrative services office, it's probably ranged anywhere from a low of 10 to a high of 25.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Hanshaw?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Okay, thank you. I think that Mrs. Ertel made some great points, and this opens up an opportunity for us to push some of the, particularly the support staff, down into the elementary and middle schools. If the high schools are closed for 3 weeks, I think that we need to give our elementary kids in particular the utmost opportunity to continue with the in-person, face-to-face learning. I've had numerous parents reach out to me beyond what we heard from this evening about the importance of this and how much their students are struggling, and how not just the parents are frustrated, but the kids are frustrated attempting to learn in the virtual environment. So I think in my opinion, we need to strongly double our efforts and try to keep these kids in the classroom as much as we can. And for that reason, I can't support our proposed plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dashner?
Mr. Archibald, if it's okay, if I can fire a few questions at you directly. A lot of this is stuff that we have seen in the numerous emails we've gotten, and I think it's good just to at least have answers out there. I know currently we're shutting down kind of per class, sometimes per building, with the impacts that are there. Why isn't that working? why can't we continue down that path of shutting down classes when, you know, there's not a teacher or a teacher's in quarantine, things of that nature?
Yeah, the challenge is, in particular, I'll say at the high school level, where we had students who were quarantined were able to just stay home and work remotely. Now that if we have teachers who are not in quarantine but isolation, who aren't able to teach from home, or if they are able to teach from home, we still need to have a sub in their classroom. So that has made it challenging at the high school level or the secondary level. Again, at the elementary level, it's just simply sheer volume of cases and the strain on the overall system and being able to having the bodies to fill the holes with the number of staff who we have out in quarantine. It was much easier early on when it was occurring at a much less frequency.
As far as the timeline with the current suggestion of going into January, how did you select that period of time? What drives that length of time as opposed to matching the 3-week pause that the governor has suggested for the high school level?
Well, the governor did not consult with me. I did not know when I put my note out last Wednesday that she was going to put that out yesterday. But what I looked at, when we looked at timing wise, we did first look at to try to come back for a meaningful period of time, whether that, in my thinking at the time, would have been 2 weeks. So do we get through the holiday and look at a period to check in between Thanksgiving and Christmas to see where, whether it's our MI Safe Start phase, where are we in terms of the county risk level, and what are we seeing within our own community and some other metrics. So I thought about that, and quite honestly, the way things are spiking up, I came to the conclusion that I would not anticipate things turning around fast enough to be able to bring students back between the holidays. So I felt in order to give teachers and families an opportunity to plan, I didn't want to just put it out there at a short window and then have to extend it. And then rather than just have folks returning back after the holiday break, similar to Mrs. Ertel's comment, I wanted to provide some time after the holiday break to be able to assess the situation before students came back. So we did look at the timing and time frame of this, and I'm sure there is not a perfect or best case. We looked at a variety of different things, but that's how we settled on where we did.
And one of the other things we heard was about this, like the self-contained special ed classes. Sounds like there's even support from the staff to allow those to continue in person. Is it possible to allow those to continue? Have those classes been affected at all? Or does it set up other issues if we were to allow that and not others?
Well, I think to the degree we can, and especially with certain populations, and we put it in our recommendation to put a priority on, and again, I'll go back to, it doesn't necessarily present problems because we did it in the fall, earlier in the fall. We prioritized some of our self-contained classrooms, and we brought back elementary age students at a much higher level than we had originally planned. And so there may be things involved with it and things that we have to coordinate, but it would certainly be a priority for ours.
And then one last one I have, and then I'll let other people talk, ask questions. We're continually being compared to other schools around us, and primarily Howell and Brighton, sometimes Novi and Northville. I know personally, looking at Novi's data, they're half of the COVID rate that we are in our community right now. So I'm sure that plays a lot into why they're still open. But have you had any contact or aware of what, say a Brighton or a Howell's doing differently that keeps them open, that they're not going full remote?
I have not had a conversation with the Brighton superintendent, and I have not had a conversation with the Howell superintendent in several weeks. And in part, that was communication about how we were handling our remote portion. So I have not talked with them. Most of my contact has been with the Oakland County superintendents.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald.
Okay, who's up next? Mr. Spangler?
Yep, I'll go. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll start off by saying that given the challenges that COVID has on so many different industries and so many different people's lives, especially based on one's own vulnerabilities, I don't really think that one size fits all really works. Well, I think that we need to look at other solutions other than just one size fits all. So one of the things, again, Mr. Archibald, and I'm sorry if I'm catching you off guard, but I also have a couple specific questions. When you presented the cases in the last couple of weeks, those were district-wide. Can you give us any more insight on how those statistics are broken out by elementary school versus secondary?
I do not have those calculated on the sheets that I have right here in front of me. I could give those to you, but it's nothing I can give to you right now.
Okay.
I apologize for not thinking ahead to give you that breakdown.
That's okay. If you could gather that and just send it in the next couple of days, that would be great. And then kind of to piggyback off of what Jenny said, along with the support staff and the substitute teachers, that if the secondary schools were going full remote, having the ability to bring them into elementary support. Some of the comments I've heard from some teachers is that they were really surprised about the lack of depth of cleaning on deep cleaning Wednesdays. So with that said, can the janitorial staff from the high school and the middle schools be used to help support the cleanliness on deep clean Wednesdays? Can they be reallocated?
We can reallocate staff, yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying not to repeat questions that other people had. I don't know. For me personally, I think that there is a significantly large population of the elementary school students who struggle to learn remotely. They just don't have the tools necessary. So I think it would be a better approach to make sure that we're doing everything we can to fully support the staff and feeling comfortable and safe to continue to deliver the education in person for that group of students. I personally don't have a problem at all, even though my daughter would love to stay in school, in middle school. I can understand the rationale because of the skill set those kids have at the secondary level to be extra cautious. And I do understand that this means that part of the teaching staff is going to be teaching remote, and part of them would still be coming in person. For me to support the district's plan, as much as I respect why you came to that decision, I would want to see the plan amended so that kindergarten through 5th grade and any special ed classrooms that can function like the CI classes without interruption in person, I would want to see the plan amended to have in-person instruction for those groups of kids, but I would fully support going remote for secondary.
Thank you.
Especially and I'll make one more comment. I meant to say this, with the governor now announcing that basically everybody needs to go back on kind of a pause for the next 3 weeks. I don't expect the cases to continue to spike. They should. I've already started to see it level off in some of the Oakland County data. But if if people follow that, and I know I will be for my business, then you should start to see those cases coming down, which would hopefully take off some of the stress of continuing to operate.
If they don't celebrate in large groups for Thanksgiving.
There's always that too. I know we've already told our family we're not. We're going to just have turkey by ourselves.
Yep, so did we. All right, thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Sure. I like what Mr. Schwegler had to say. I'm kind of inclined to be in favor of going down some form of that route with what we do. To the folks at home and all the folks that chimed in and called in and wrote comments and emailed, I don't disagree with almost everything that everybody said. So how can I vote one way or the other, or some version of that? It's an impossible decision to make. So I've tried to look at the bigger picture, broader than just what we do, broader than what we as a board do, what our teachers do, what our families do. Our situation that we're in, the reason we're discussing this is not the fault of our district. It's not the fault of our staff. It's not the fault of our administration, our teachers. It's what's happened. The bigger picture is the numbers have skyrocketed. Whether you are exposed in our classrooms, in our buildings, or outside of our classrooms, we have had to shut classrooms down. We have had to quarantine just us, our district, many, many people. I think too many people. So my question is, how do we fix that? I don't have a single solution, a one sentence answer to fix that. While I don't disagree with shutting down till into January, I think that's a long time. I would like to keep our K-8, our JK through 8 students in person as much as possible. It's obvious they need that. It is obvious and clear that we want that. At the high schools, attendance, from what I understand, the folks that I've talked to, the attendance in person is below 25%. That has led to teachers being quarantined and classes not being covered in the buildings. I believe that's the same case with elementary, that classes haven't been covered. We get to the point where we want 50% of our students to be in the classrooms like they wanted to, but they can't. So we're kind of spinning our wheels with empty classrooms. And I find that a difficult challenge to overcome. So what do? We have to do something. I think our entire community has to do more. We have to do better than we have been doing. And if that difficult decision falls on us to do that, then that's what we have to do to help the bigger picture, to decrease the overall numbers. I would like to believe that Mr. Schwegler is absolutely correct, that with some small more mitigation factors, things that we do, those numbers will level off and get better. We said at the onset of the beginning of the school year that many things could happen. We could have to shut classrooms down. We could have to shut schools down. We could have to shut the whole district down. That's what happened. Our numbers went up, and now we're faced with that. So this should not be a surprise that this is on the table to discuss. Those are my comments for now. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Mr. Schwegler, if I may, just like looking through the cases reported on our website, it's 14 elementary, 14 secondary, if I counted correctly, and then the remainder are the district. And if I can get any of the breakdown by quarantine, I'll try to get that to you as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Bate.
Thank you. I just want to, I'll start by connecting with what Eric was just saying, that none of this should come as a surprise. right now. We need to hash this out in detail because we said this was going to happen in August and it's happening. Every number that we're looking at is worse, demonstrably, provably worse than it was when we started the year remote. All of them. All right. So no one up here is trying to make the case that virtual learning is the answer necessarily to anything. Nobody up here is trying to suggest that virtual learning is the best thing for our youngest learners, because it isn't. We're in the midst of a pandemic that is worsening. We're in another wave. So we have to recalibrate our thinking right now and focus a little bit on the safety of things, because it's necessary. Because the lives of our kids and our staff and our community are more important than a couple of weeks of flipping back and forth between remote and in person. Having said that, I have my own concerns about how much time we're going to miss. But I want to just back up for a second and make sure I have a full understanding and give the public a full understanding of the impact that this has had. So am I correct in just looking back over my communications and my notes and the things we've talked about, am I correct in asserting that every single building in the district, with the exception of ECC and Bartlett, have been impacted by this current wave?
I'm going to challenge you to I'm going to define impacted for you, Mr. Abate, rather than the ECC. We had some COVID-related circumstances very early in the summer, nothing during the school year to my knowledge. I believe every building has been impacted by at least having students quarantined, whether it was related to the bus or a home situation, something like that. Bartlett and Salem, if I'm not mistaken, we have not had, again, they've both been impacted tangentially, but have not had a school associated case, if I'm recalling correctly.
Right. Okay. So, we talked really casually about this notion of quarantining a classroom and flipping back and forth between the two of those, which is, of course, easier now than it ever was before, because we didn't do that before and we're more prepared for that. But it's still extremely difficult, and there's pieces of it that we don't remember. We have specialist teachers, for example. You can point out music. They have a schedule that they're trying to meet their kids' needs, and you suddenly have to flip a classroom remote, and it changes their world pretty significantly. And they're trying to juggle and adjust on the fly to make sure that they can do their job for our students as well. And in the contact tracing piece of it, for a principal and for the folks working with them, when you have a case, yes, it sounds like it's not significant when you have one or two cases in a building, but one or two cases in a building means, could mean 20, 30, 40 kids that might be quarantined, and you might lose an entire day doing that. You're talking about administrators going down to classrooms, literally measuring space, looking at, seating charts in cafeterias, looking at seats on the bus, making contact to the health department and to central office. These are significant things and that we're asking our teachers and our administrators to do, and they're doing it really well. And they can do it, right? They can do it. But the fact that they can doesn't necessarily mean that they should be expected to, if we can do something different to put them in a situation where they don't feel as if they're constantly, at risk. And things are nasty out there right now. So I've said a lot of things, and I don't know that I've come to really a thesis here, because I'm still struggling myself. For me, I do think our youngest kids need to be in school. I wonder if there is a middling or a middle ground piece that we could find here. I think what's significant is finding a way to take a little bit of time at the backside of these holiday breaks, right? So that week after Thanksgiving, that week after the Christmas and the New Year, because we know that the holidays are going to stir things up. We know it. When we can't deny that. And for any building that has not been significantly impacted, they will be. This is not an if, it's a when. We said this in August, and we're here again. Everyone's going to be impacted. So if there's a way, maybe, if I don't know, having everybody go back and forth is a lot to ask. Is there a way that maybe we could look at that middle piece of December? We have our kids go out for before Thanksgiving, stay out for a week after Thanksgiving, take a look at those couple of weeks in the beginning of December as a potential return, to try to bank those couple of weeks so kids can get some face time with their teachers, then take a little bit of time at the back end of the far break. I don't know, maybe there's some middle of the road piece that we could find in there because it does sound like there's some discomfort here with the full stretch. But I do have to say, for Mr. Archibald's point, I do think you have the right of it, sir, in the sense that the overall most safe play for the whole community is to proceed with the plan that you put forward, because it puts our people in the best possible space for their health and safety. And we're not the only district that's dealing with that right now. The only district that's voted to go that way. There's a lot of districts in the county surrounding us that have already done this. So I've said a lot. I don't know that I've convinced myself or anybody else of anything, because I'm really struggling. But I know maybe we can talk about those middle weeks. But I don't know what you guys think.
Okay, I guess I will take a shot. Once again, I'm really glad that we've had a really good discussion. I mean, it's evident that everyone on the board is listening to the community and taking that into consideration, and I appreciate that. I do agree with just about everything that's been said. For every person that wants remote, there's someone that doesn't want remote, and that's been that way since the beginning of this. And we can't solve that problem. So I think for our secondary students, I think, like Mr. Swagler pointed out, having them stay remote until January seems like a somewhat feasible expectation. Keeping in mind that there's the week that we're in now, the rest of this week. The Thanksgiving week is 2 days, and there's only 3 weeks in December. So although it sounds like a lot when it's 7 weeks, but it's only about 4 weeks, 4 weeks of education. And of that, only 4 days a week, they would be in person. And at the secondary, it was only 2 days a week. So that seems somewhat feasible to me. The elementary and the self-contained students, they do have a higher need to be in person. The end of Thanksgiving, I think, is the end of the trimester for our elementary students. I would like to see maybe if we could limp through just finishing this week, at least in person, for maybe those students. And then I also agree with maybe, trying to look, a week or so out after Thanksgiving, maybe giving the opportunity to come back a week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks in December. I would like to consider that. What I do know is that when we voted in August to go remote, we promised the community, and the administration promised the community, that we would do everything we could to get students back. And we did that. We delivered that. We brought our special education students back before everyone else. We brought our elementary back 100% right out of the gate, as soon as we could. In our secondary, we followed our plan, and we've been, so we have done that. We've asked the administration to bring students back as soon as they can, and as soon as they can safely, and they've done it. And now they've come back again to us and said, we can't do it anymore. And so I am also inclined to, trust their judgment. And if we ask them to bring students back as soon as they can, I trust that they will do that. I'm not sure what the vote would look like in that, but that's kind of my thoughts on that going forward. Mr. Archibald, is there any possibility to, at least for the elementary, to limp through just to finish this week before Thanksgiving?
It's the time that I remind you, Mrs. Hanshaw, that I work for you and your 6 colleagues on the board. I'm going to try and piece together what I'm hearing, and I don't think anybody disagrees with where we're trying to put the emphasis. If what I'm hearing you say is, was it JK through elementary and our self-contained through the remainder of this week?
That was what I suggested. Yes.
And then a checkpoint between the holidays.
Just for that population, yes.
For that population, the governor's, she put 3 weeks from tomorrow, so I think that's December 9th. I've looked at a calendar quite a bit over the last week or so. I think that's the 9th.
Yes.
And so if you're saying, we would look the 9th or 10th, a lot of the county-wide and data that I was referring to earlier doesn't come out till sometimes Wednesday, usually Thursday of the week. And could we make a turnaround or a decision at that point to try and bring students back that following Monday for what would amount to be 1 week prior to Christmas? Am I following you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. No, if I said that with some.
No, I know it doesn't when when we say it, it doesn't sound.
Did not mean to imply it that way. But can we get these populations through the remainder of this week and do a check-in at some point between the holidays? I would say we can do that, and certainly if directed by the board to do that, we would absolutely do that. One way or the other, our team will be getting back together tomorrow morning to continue working on things. So again, I know that's, Mrs. Anshaw, was just your thought. I don't know, obviously, where the rest of the board would be on that.
Yeah. Any other proposals?
Yeah, if I may say, I don't like the idea of just keeping the elementary in for the rest of this week and then taking 3 weeks off. I know Thanksgiving takes up a couple of those days, 3 of those days. I personally would like to see those self-contained and elementary stay in session through the rest of this semester, knowing that we have the ability to consolidate some of our resources to help with some of the logistical challenges that are making it difficult to operate right now, especially with the way the secondary schools are going. But I would personally propose to just leave K-5 and special or self-contained alone, and then send the middle school and high schools full remote. And I'll even give to the January 8th. I think that would be fine.
I would agree with Mr. Swagler's proposal as clerk.
Okay, Mr. Bate?
When Mr. Archibald, when you put it like that, to come back for like a week right before Christmas, you're right. That probably is, that logistically is probably not a lot of gain there for what we'd have to put in to make that happen. So that does make some sense. I can understand the discomfort with the stretch of time from now until January, but I don't understand the idea of taking no time whatsoever for those kids between now and then. There is zero chance that the holidays will not stir this up. They will. They absolutely will. The numbers are going up now. There's no way that people traveling, visiting with family, which is absolutely going to happen, right? Shopping for the holidays, all of it is going to stir this up. Those numbers won't drop. They're going to intensify because of all that activity. So not giving any sort of buffer at all to the elementaries. I want them to be in person as much as we possibly can as well, but to not do anything, at least on the backside of the Thanksgiving and the backside of Christmas and New Year's, I just don't think is responsible, especially given the fact that we are seeing our staff, students and families come, our first priority is students in particular, but we are seeing our staff, and we're seeing in these numbers that the older people are, more affected they are. We're seeing our staff in close contact and contracting this. And what we're going to be saying is that we're willing to knowingly at this point. I mean, in the summer, a lot of this was hypothetical, right? We were afraid that these things were going to happen. We said that the teachers were going to be put in harm's way and that some of them would catch this and that we'd have interruptions and that we'd be worried about that. We are seeing it. We're in it. It's happening. So the notion that we are going to just ask them to go back in there without any buffer, without any time off, and just weather the storm of the holidays, that's us knowingly putting them in harm's way. That doesn't feel right to me. It just doesn't.
Well, and also keep in mind, we have self-contained classes right now that are at home because people are being quarantined. So students with special needs do also get sick. Their teachers do also get sick. So that's not as cut and dry either, although I do think that we should make the best effort to get them into the buildings, but they are also affected. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Carrie. I didn't mean to jump on you there. I mean, for me, like I like the idea maybe of having that touch point, maybe at the same time frame as the high schools, like you were just saying, in early December, where we can come back together. And if we have to do this again, that's fine. I'm happy to consider the comments and do it all over again. And it's tough, but we can do it. At least have that touch point to talk it over again. If maybe things are better somehow in a couple of weeks, and we can find a way to bring our youngest kids back. But I do think something on the other end of Thanksgiving, like that week after Thanksgiving or that week after Christmas, I don't know how we send everybody out to holidays and then just bring them right back into the school as if it's not going to be a problem. But we're inviting just a real serious issue across our district. We know it's coming.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Hertel?
Yeah, I guess my preference is to keep the K through 5 in until Thanksgiving. Take the week after Thanksgiving, so it'd be the 30th through the 4th, as remote, to allow everyone's travel and family gatherings that they're going to do kind of take hold, so to speak, if people are sick, and then come back, have 2 weeks in person, and then you have the 2 weeks of holiday break, and then the week after the Christmas break, again, start off remote and then come back into person. But I would plead with the community, have a nice quiet Thanksgiving at home. And if your kids are sick, do not send them to school. I have heard from many parents and many teachers that parents are sending their kids to school sick. Stay home, remote learn after Thanksgiving. If you're going to manifest symptoms that happen, it'll happen within that week. And then get them back for 2 weeks, Christmas holiday for 2 weeks.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy?
You stole my thunder there, Mr. Tell. I was looking at the calendar at the same time. I would be supportive of exactly what you laid out. I think the thought behind that is exactly what I was thinking. If the rest of the board and Mr. Archibald were amiable to that, I think that's a compromise, a little more of a happy medium, possibly a little more of a solution that we can try to pull off. And I would also say, let's absolutely implore our community to buckle down, and it's not going to go away. We have to be better at doing what we haven't been doing as well.
Can I ask a clarifying question to you, Steve? At semester time, because I think part of what's gone on in this first semester of some parents who kind of started with our hybrid plan were a little uncomfortable that we went to 4 days instead of 50%, but they felt like that was the best choice to make at the time, and maybe they're less comfortable now. But at semester time, do parents have the opportunity still to flip to a full virtual pathway for the second semester?
At the high school level, which is semesters, they will. They're in the process of actually requesting that information from people now so that we can build the schedules for the second semester. At the elementary level, where we're trimesters, we provided an opportunity to make that switch when we changed the plan earlier in the fall. That took the place of the change between the first and second trimester. And at that time, we also communicated in March, which I think is the end of the next trimester, that we would not be redoing class lists and so forth like we did last time, and that we would work to accommodate requests at the elementary level as space permitted. I can tell you, and I think the elementary principals would acknowledge this, they've been getting a number, or I'll say some, I don't want to quantify it if I don't exactly know, but they've been getting some requests from parents wanting to move now into the virtual learning pathway because of their anxiousness, and it's been we're running out of space to accommodate those at this point.
So is it a significant number of requests where you might be able to actually make some change? Or maybe I guess it would have to be a small number of requests where you could actually accommodate those parents? Or is that something that you're not going to do?
To my knowledge, they've been accommodating at a small level where they could and keeping class sizes down. Without having run through the process, I can't tell you if it's a lot or a little. Again,
I mean, I do think that what Tony says does make sense. I hate to have the constant disruption of back and forth. You know, so Christmas is on the 25th. They come back the 8th. Is that it? I mean, is that, you think, enough time to where we would not need an additional week? Because by then, most people who are going to get it are probably going to show symptoms, but I guess there is the asymptomatic crowd too.
Plus, there's New Year's. So,
oh yeah, because people are going to stay indoors for that.
I mean, the whole break.
So
and same with Thanksgiving.
The official holiday break is the 21st, and then come back on the 4th, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So I think what the original proposal by Mr. Archibald is staying out until the 8th. So that gives that week after the holiday, Christmas and New Year. I think my proposal is the week after Thanksgiving and then the week after New Year. So basically that first week of the 4th, which in normal years, we'd be going back to school on the 4th, take that week of the 4th and be remote learning, and then actually go back to the in-person on the 11th. So that gives you the week that if you're going to come down with any symptoms or exposures during the holidays, you've got that time to kind of quote unquote get them, hopefully realize, get yourself tested, stay home, or most likely, you know, if you've made it through that time period, you know, not be affected or infected.
If we're being realistic, I mean, there's going to be enough people who don't stay home that if we don't stop those weeks, we're probably going to have to stop enough classes 1 or 2 weeks after that due to quarantines. That's probably the smartest way to do it.
Mrs. Ertel, with what you're proposing on the front end of that, were you suggesting we have school for the rest of this week and next week up to the break, or was it going to be remote starting Monday?
I mean, yep, sorry. So obviously, you know, the high school's done starting Wednesday. Keep the pre-K through. I'm a little bit back and forth on the middle school. You know, obviously the governor is only stating high school 9 through 12 is done starting Wednesday for the 3 weeks. For sure, junior kindergarten through 5th grade, finish out this week, do the Monday, Tuesday of next week. We're already off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the holiday. Let them get to Thanksgiving. There hasn't been any major holidays or events that's happened over the last week or so that would necessarily cause a spike that would be, you know, sort of in the forefront of everybody's mind, like a holiday, so to speak. So let the junior kindergarten through 5th grade at least go through to the Thanksgiving break. After Thanksgiving, everybody's remote for that week after Thanksgiving. At least JK through 5 come back the 2 weeks. And then that's when you start our official Christmas break is the 21st that week, the week of the 28th, which gets you to New Year's. Do the week of the 4th. Everybody comes back full on remote, and then start back in the in-person on the 11th.
And that's all predicated on nothing happening during those remote weeks that makes us rethink.
Correct. I mean, obviously, yes, that's based
Presumably.
on hoping that if people are going to go off and do their, you know, heavy partying and New Year's Eve gatherings and everything, that you've got that week buffer time. Because from what I understand, most things I'm seeing is it's like a 3 to 7 day time period after exposure that you start to get your symptoms or issues where you're going to be either finding out that you're positive or coming down with symptoms that's going to give you an idea to stay home, et cetera. So you've got that week to kind of, quote unquote, get your symptoms, get your illness, get your fever, get your cough. And then obviously, if you're sick, you don't come back. Hopefully you don't come back. But it gives that week buffer time to kind of let let COVID kind of run through your system a little bit.
My only hesitation on that is if the people are asymptomatic, which oftentimes students are, they're going to still be contagious, potentially another, well, that's only 7 days, so another 3 to 4 days. Well, normally it's a 14-day quarantine if you've been exposed. So we could have asymptomatic students who are highly contagious because now the virus has grown in their body, and then they're going to come to school when they're most contagious.
Right.
But I guess that's just the asymptomatic folk. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could have that with kids right now. You know, they could be going to school asymptomatic, spreading it around. You know, so you have that. Obviously, you know that there's probably going to be a higher risk because you know the holidays and people just aren't going to stay home and not go to their gatherings. You know, so I guess, you know, you have that known time period. You know, other times of the, you know, days, weeks, months, you don't know. And obviously, I'm not saying my suggestion is the end all be all. It's just another way of trying to get the K through 5 at least in. I don't know what to think about middle school. They're that kind of, you know, just like their age, they're in that little tween year of, you know, where's the sweet spot for the middle school kid. You know, I mean, obviously my preference is to have kids in school as much as possible. I'd love to have my high school kids back in school. You know, my son just thrives better in school. But, you know, again, they have the ability to learn from home. It's the K through 5 that I think just really struggles with the remote learning.
And it's easier to cohort our elementary than it is the middle school. Definitely.
Correct.
Exposure points in the middle school.
Correct.
Than elementary.
Yes. And I don't know what it's like at middle school. I know at the high school level, because you're dealing with students that are older and can kind of make their own decisions. A lot of them have their own transportation. A lot of them, you know, I don't know that my daughter's classes have been full on 50%, or even my son, you know, one's 9th grade, one's 12th grade. You know, a lot of times, you know, there might be only 4 or 5 other kids in the class because they're like, oh, you know, my teacher's remote anyway because of a health issue, so they're not even bother showing up. Or, you know, they just didn't bother to get up, get dressed, and go to school, so they're just going to sign on to the computer. So, you know, I think at the high school level, you know, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, you know, for the teacher, for the student, et cetera. But I think at the elementary level, you've got kids in a group, you've got the same teacher, you've got the same room, you've got people coming to them in terms of lunches, specials, et cetera. So there is some containment there. And, you know, you know, it's hard. How do you get a kindergartner, first grader who are learning to read, write, and type on a computer all day?
Yeah. Mr. Bate?
Yeah, I would just, listening to Mr. Tell talk about the middles and struggling with that, I would argue that we, if we're talking about parceling out what we're doing for the levels, we should be treating the middle schools as secondary buildings. And I believe that, you know, from the governor's perspective the other night, when she's talking globally about schools across the state and, you know, separating out the high schools, there's a lot of schools in the state that are K-8, those types of things. Middle schools, though, the way we've got them arranged, 6, 7, 8, they're more closely aligned with high school than anything else, with the switching of classes and all the various contexts that come with that. So if we're talking about keeping anybody in, I think our conversation should be about K-8, and then we'll treat the middles in the same way as the high schools, and especially since we're seeing really similar issues at the middle schools than we are as we are in the high schools. And that's just you know, the middles tend to get forgotten that way because they're in the middle, but I'm sensitive to that for obvious reasons. So I think we should, that's the way I would categorize those.
Well, and to comment off that, I do think that we have a very real logistical issue with staffing, as Mr. Archibald had mentioned earlier. And I think that the middle school, as you said, in that regard as well, also functions like the high school, where it's just really hard to make up for that one teacher who's 1 out of 6 classes for that student or 3 classes for that student that day. I think that's an extra challenge on top of the intermingling of students.
Mr. Archibald, have the district nurses helped in any of this planning? Have they had any input in your suggestion?
We did not talk with them about the extended plan. They have been invaluable in our contact tracing, notifications, and follow up with families and staff, and really spending the vast majority of their time with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Are we at a point where anyone would like to make an official? Well, so we would have to, do we vote on the original proposal and then close that one and then open a new motion? Does that make sense to everyone?
Well, you can have the motion withdrawn and modify it.
Okay, so does someone want to withdraw the original motion and offer a first attempt at a new motion?
Wouldn't the person who made the motion need to be the withdrawer?
That is correct.
Okay.
In that case, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, motion is withdrawn. Do we have to vote on that, or he can just withdraw it?
I think you could just withdraw it.
Okay, all right. Mr. Kennedy has withdrawn his original motion. Do we have a new motion?
I guess I can do it. I'm probably not going to say it right. So correct me if I'm not making it correct. I propose the ECC through 5th grade, stay in session through Thanksgiving. The week of November 30, we moved to entire district remote. Back in person. Let me get my calendar out. For
December
5
5th.
and younger, 5th grade and younger, December 7th. Should we go all the way through to the January dates or leave that for December? Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Stay in person through to holiday break.
The 18th.
The 18th. High school and secondary based on governor's recommendations. So those stay through, I think, the 9th, and then come back to their 50%. Obviously, that's going to be predicated on governor orders. And then full district remote the week of January 4th. And then back to current situation, right now situation, January 11th. Did I catch it all? That was horrible.
Can I make a suggestion?
For the attempt, Mrs. Ertel, that was courageous of you to step out there.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Dashner, do we need to make?
I was just going to make a suggestion for her motion, possibly. Maybe if we could do it in 2 steps, maybe if we could do one motion for element or through grades 5 and younger. So that's a nice clean part of what we're doing. And then a second motion for middle school and high school. That way you don't get the confusing overlap between who's doing what when, possibly.
Right.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
So withdraw what you just said again.
Does that make it easier for Steve to put that in the plan? Because we're approving the extension of the plan. So a change to that plan would require that language for him to put in that spreadsheet, the boxes that we looked at earlier. Am I correct in thinking that's how that would go?
Well, that's broke out by level. So I think doing it in two pieces would
make it
clean
easier
for that. Yeah.
It's currently JK through
Okay,
5,
so
school and high school.
So start with the easier one, Jenny. Start with second.
gotcha. All right, let me get my calendar back open again so I don't sound like a fish out of water. All right, so I moved to 5th grade and younger go to full remote learning the week of November 30. Back in person starting week of December 7 until previously scheduled holiday break, which starts December 21. Then back into full remote the week of January 4. Back in person January 11.
And this was.
Should I do another?
Just
do I do a second motion for secondary?
I just want to clarify that motion. That was ECC through 5th grade and also self-contained special education?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I didn't mention them in the first. Yeah, I'm trying to catch all the higher risk. Yes. So that's the first motion. Do we need to do a second on that, and then I do a second motion for the secondary, or should I clump a second motion as secondary?
I will support the first motion.
Yes, we'll just do the first motion. Yeah.
And then you can do the second motion.
Okay. So moved by Mr. Tell, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Questions or comments on, or clarification on that first motion?
Can I just request someone to rephrase it? We can just rephrase it, please.
Oh, you want me to like refresh exactly what was said? Okay.
Yes, I want to make, yes, please.
Yes. So the motion was the early childhood center through 5th grade and all self-contained students would stay in person through Thanksgiving. They would go remote the week of November 30th. They would come back to in-person again, or their hybrid in-person, from December 7th through December 18th. And they would go remote again the week of January 4th through January 8th. And then they would go back to the original plan on January 11th.
Correct.
Okay. Questions or comments on that motion? Mr. Bate?
Yeah. God, I've got a lot of stuff that I'm thinking about it. And Jenny, I appreciate you laying out something for us to get our heads around, because it's been hard to kind of parcel all this out. A couple of things I'm just kind of, they're swimming for me. Are we, because we've suddenly made this pretty complicated, and I initially said that, I felt like we at least needed to do this much. Have we made it, thinking about parents in the community, have we made it even more difficult on them in terms of their planning for this whole stretch of time, this holiday season, because we've got this sort of in and out movement, throughout that entire time, instead of being able to say to yourself, okay, we're either all in or we're all out over those weeks. And then the other thing I'm wondering about is if we take this through Thanksgiving, which I initially was kind of thinking that, that would be something I'd support as well. Are we increasing the probability that some of these kids are going to be exposed and then go home and bring that to their families for those holidays? I mean, would it be smarter to try to stop now and give that week of buffer there so that we're sort of trying to, protect families that way? I don't know, it's just a couple of things that I'm thinking about. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I guess my comment to that, Mr. Abate, with all of the input we've gotten from community, it seems like those who want face-to-face, that they don't want that to stop. are more than willing to put up with the 2-week class quarantines, things of that nature, in order to keep in face-to-face as much as possible. I mean, I saw that in numerous of the emails that came through over the last couple days. So I wouldn't assume that means everybody would want it that way, but it seems like a vocal majority of people would be willing to put up with the week here, week there, versus us wanting to do 3 or 4 weeks because we think it's more convenient for them, scheduling wise.
And they also need to understand that when they come back on January or December 7th, a lot of these classes will probably go immediately back into quarantine. So they need to be prepared that even though we're saying they're going to be in person those 2 weeks, very, very high likelihood that they won't.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, and that would be an asterisk that I would put on the end of this motion, not officially, but just, with the comments, is that if we're starting to see things that are way out of whack, or maybe COVID is running through our staff group as no fault of their own, and we're unable to, conduct the business end of school, have teachers in classrooms, principals, office staff, things like that, where we just can't run a school. I don't think we're telling Mr. Archibald that we have to be able to teach kids in 5th grade and younger without having the staff to do it.
Mr. Kennedy, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Craig. I think with contact tracing, we should be able to figure that out if and when that happens. And I think doing this, we put the ball in the court of our community to do what we need to do. We've compromised, and I think it's up to the numbers in our district and in the community and in the county to speak to what our next move will be after Thanksgiving.
Mr. Clark, did you have any comments regarding the current motion?
I would support what Mrs. Ertel has put forth at this point. I think that it's a good compromise. It's going to keep us in person as much as we can. I think we're trying to use a crystal ball when obviously that hasn't always worked. So I think we're just going to have to deal with the situation as it unfolds, but make the effort to keep our kids in the classroom. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I almost think it's silly for us even to be talking about what we're going to do in January at this point. But I definitely think this is, a decent motion that, may change, but it's something to work with, I guess. Any other comments?
Are we intending to revisit the way we were talking about in early December? Or are we just going forward with this?
I think in what we've seen in other districts, they have had plans, for example, to be remote through a certain late date in January. We're still required to revisit this monthly. So even if we put plans tonight into February and March, we're going to be revisiting them at one of our 2 meetings in December.
Yeah, we do have a meeting on December 7th, and officially on the 14th, the 14th is when we would officially revisit this again, per the schedule. Mr. Schwegler?
No, I like that motion. I'm good.
Any other comments?
I'm ultimately, I think I will support, and I appreciate what Jenny has done to try to hash that out. I'm just going to say, though, the longer I sit here and the more I think and the more we go around and around, while I do think we need to keep the kids in person as much as possible, and I've said that over and over again tonight, sitting and puzzling out in my mind, just thinking about my own kids and how to manage all of that, I think we have made things pretty complicated. So it makes me a little nervous, and it leaves me kind of feeling like we might have been better served to just put our trust in the original plan that we've, for the folks that we put in place to make that plan for us. But it is a compromise, and hopefully it'll be to the benefit of our students. So I can go with that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Bate, please call the roll.
All right, Mr. Clark.
Sorry, I
Check.
couldn't get unmuted. Yes.
All right, Ms. Zertel.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
And Ms. Sancho.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. All right, do we have a secondary motion?
Oh, good Lord. Do I have to do that again?
I think we're all looking at Betty.
Jenny, you can just approve the boards or
What?
Yeah, just approve the district's recommendation.
with the exception of the week after. Oh, no, it's already in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Remind me, what does it go through for secondary? Come back in person on the 11th? Is that the original proposal?
Correct.
Which is unchanged. Correct.
Okay, so
It's written right on
okay,
the
so I'll
agenda.
move to for secondary. Gotcha. So I move for secondary 6 through 12 to be full remote until January 11.
Thank you.
I'll support.
Moved by Mr. Till, supported by Mr. Schwegler. Questions or comments on that motion? Okay, Mr. Bate, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Sancho.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
I vote yes, Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Ms. Zertel.
Yes.
And Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully, the community will do their part and these students can actually spend some time in school. All right, moving on to item number 8, administration. First up is legislation. Do we have any legislation, Mr. Archibald?
Nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is board committee reports, legislative.
I have nothing.
All right. Policy is meeting next month. Finance.
Nothing.
Wow. Facility and grounds.
Well, I was hoping I think because we were going to have the presentation on the bond, but I guess now I got to talk about it. So we did meet with Barton Mallow and IDS, and they're moving forward with some schematic design for a few of the projects coming up. Turf at South Line East, Food Lab, replanning into classrooms, science classrooms at Southline High School, pool addition, some paving replacement, flooring replacement, the auxiliary gym at Southline East, chiller replacement at Southline East. So they have a pretty hefty list of projects that we're moving forward with. And it looks like we're doing our board presentation on the 14th. So hopefully the whole board will get a nice slideshow and more detail about all the projects we're looking at.
Actually the 7th, December 7th is when we'll get that presentation.
7th, sorry.
Okay, great.
I got too many dates in my head.
Yeah, I know. Curriculum and communications.
We did not meet. We didn't have anything pressing on the agenda.
All right. The Oakland Schools Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. I attended that on Wednesday. They talked a little bit about specific language used when talking about people in diverse backgrounds. A little bit about how language matters, people first language, that sort of thing. They're also talking about doing a racial equity habit building challenge. So this committee is going to commit to every day. There's a 21-day and a 30-day. I'm not sure which one we're doing, but they've committed that everyone will do commit to this challenge where every day you will read an article or watch a video or somehow do something that they'll give you to support understanding and becoming more understanding about equity. So that's kind of interesting. And I do know they were talking about having people in this committee bring that back for their boards to participate in. So yeah, so I will let you know how that goes. And, Jenny and I could probably either do it together or both of us can do it. But it sounds like an interesting way to educate large amounts of people. So should be interesting. The Oakland County Health Department School Board update.
The last scheduled meeting was last Wednesday, and for some reason, it didn't occur. They had a Skype set up for it, but no one ever showed up. So not sure what happened there. But if anybody is interested, the report that they go over is available if you search Oakland County weekly COVID cases. It will bring up the weekly report that they go through, and basically the report for last week is showing all the metrics just going through the roof, not in a good way. The only thing that was positive out of it is our healthcare capacity in the county is still strong, but outside of that, everything is way up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Archibald, item D is other. Do you have any other?
Yeah, if we can revisit the plan for just a second. There is one item that was not covered or included in either of the motions, and I would request consideration to maintaining Wednesday the 18th as a work day for teachers in preparation to going fully remote, and with what we're asking of our elementary teachers to move in and out of remote and in person and up against breaks, I would at least request the latitude to try and work out some additional work time, perhaps on a Wednesday between now and then for them, or maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it is. I don't know when it is based on this schedule, but I think that's an important element that shouldn't be lost. However you want me to accomplish that, I will do.
Okay, so one of us make a motion, Mr. Abate?
Well, what would you want the motion? Well, I mean, I speak for myself, but I would say, Mr. Archibald, give them as many Wednesdays as they need. I don't say that flippantly. I mean, our staff, we have now asked our staff to take on a lot, even more than they've been taking on, and they need the time. So for me, I don't speak for everybody. You guys chime in, but I think Mr. Archibald and his team should have the latitude to give his staff everything they need, including those Wednesdays if they need them. I don't know that we do even need a motion on something like that.
If not, just to at least had public conversation that's something that I'll continue to work on. And it may initially, without thinking much about it, would maintain it for this Wednesday, but also looking at it for future ones for our elementary teachers, because again, those shifts in and out up against the breaks, and I already know what they're doing in the evenings and on the weekends. So they need that additional time and deserve it. So
I'll agree. Give them what they need.
Agreed.
Yep.
I agree also. I mean, we're putting a lot on their shoulders with jumping in and out. If they need time to prepare, as they say, we give it to them.
Thank you. I'll work on that and keep the board informed.
Thank you. All right, item 9 is reports, Southline Educational Foundation.
Sure. They sent a message to share with everybody for tonight from the SLEF board. Thank a teacher this season with a Star Award. Star Awards honor a Southline Community Schools team member who's made a difference in a student's life. It's a great way to help our schools and show our appreciation for our education professionals. Check out the website for more information. Also, as we enter this season of thanks and giving, we look for your generosity and ask you to join us and give a tax deductible donation to the Southline Educational Foundation. Think of us on Giving Tuesday, which is December 1st, or simply while shopping online at Amazon Smile. Every contribution makes a real impact on the lives of the children in the South Lyon community. And I'll just say thank you to that board, to that organization. They really, really work hard to do great things for kids and get after it even in these really tough times.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 10 is public comments. Mr. Buckley, I think we have another 20 or so public comments. Do you want to start us off with, it's number 63 is where we're at.
Sure, I see. 1 second. Let me just get back to that spot. And we have first on the list is Jen Gunderson, and this is a call-in. If you're there. Again, Jen Gunderson, if you're with us, you are welcome to speak. We can maybe circle back on that one.
Yep, or she can just jump in if she happens to join us.
All right. Next is Mandy Venning, asking the board to please not give up on face-to-face learning. Is it possible to look at school by school and class by class cases each week and only switch in and out of virtual to those that need it? Some school districts, classes, or teachers haven't had any issues. Or is it possible to just take a 2 to 3 week break rather than several weeks at a time? Kim Bezos is next. For the best of the community, SLCS need to temporarily shut down. This is not about how kids learn best. We all know that they learn best in the classroom. This is about their health and safety, as well as the health and safety of the teachers and staff. The district numbers reported are not accurate. They do not reflect kids who are sick or quarantined and or refusing to test. This is about protecting our community and being responsible during a pandemic. Jay Coda is next. As I'm listening to you reading parents' comments, I'm wondering if you're going to take them into consideration. In August, you dismissed what our customers asked you to consider. Many ended up leaving the district because of the poor decision that was made based on emotions and not data. If you worked at a corporation, you would have been fired for such poor judgment. Additionally, I ask every teacher who is calling in and supporting remote learning to please back their request by real data. Christine Campo is next. January 8th or later is way too long for these kids to be out of the classroom. Once again, our children suffer. It appears that the community taxpayers have no voice in this community. This district is managing our kids' education with zero regards for their growth year over year. January 8th is far too long to be closed again. Next, we have Christina Reeves. This is a call-in. Christina Reeves, are you there with us?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hello, go ahead. Thanks for being here.
Okay, I'd like to address the date that we are supposed to decide for whether or not we want to go to the virtual pathway or stay in remote. With the information changing constantly and the numbers skyrocketing, I don't know how we're supposed to make that decision by that date. I mean, obviously you guys are having a hard time deciding what to do for the next week, but we're supposed to decide what to do for our kids, you know, in the next month. Also, I do agree that the first plan that you guys had for everybody to go to remote was probably the best and most responsible, because it's clear that our community is not doing what is necessary to keep our kids safe, and now we're dealing with the ramifications of it. So there's no reason to think that they're going to do better. And I do appreciate all of your guys' hard work, and I commend you for it, and definitely do not envy your shoes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie Michaels is next. I'm a brand new social worker in the district, and while I truly love being in the school buildings with the kids, I feel that it is putting all of our staff and families at risk of this virus. I'm split between 3 buildings and have been requested to come to another building to pull kids out of class and take them to the quarantine room. Kids and staff are being quarantined at such a high rate that their learning is in jeopardy anyways. Please consider supporting the recommendation. Kelly Kluba is next. I'm wondering why when class shifts to remote learning, live streaming all day isn't an option. I have 2 elementary, 1st and 3rd grade children with a 3-year-old at home as well. I am then having to remind the kids of their meetings the whole day. Also, with the teachers streaming all day, just like in school, the children can raise their hand and ask a question instead of having to wait for an office hour meeting or email response. Thank you so much. Next, Mrs. Hanshaw, we don't have a full name here.
I think it's a last name. Maybe it's just say Mr. Tierney or Mrs. Tierney.
Okay. And it's appears to be a call-in anyway. Mr. or Mrs. Tierney, are you with us? Should we go ahead and circle back on that one? Mr. or Mrs. Tierney, if you're there, you're welcome to come back and unmute if you catch up with us.
Yep.
Katie Duncan is next. Bus cases. My kids are quarantined from sitting within 6 feet or 15 feet or 15, I think it should be 15 minutes or longer of a positive student. Instead of kids being sat in accordance from when they get in the bus, they should be sitting by how long they will be exposed by another individual. For example, the first kid picked up should be sitting by a kid who gets on the bus last, so no one is sitting next to someone for more than 15 minutes. Next is Hannah. Excuse me. Sorry. Maybe I'm off the screen a little bit.
No, yeah, Hannah Schultz.
Okay. Sorry, one second. Okay, I can assure you there are many of us who are completely uncomfortable sending our kids every day. As Mr. Abate said, numbers are tremendously worse now than they were in August. We were unable to be in person at that time, and we should not remain so now. Kids are not separated 6 feet. They eat about 2 feet from those without masks on. Kids are not wearing masks appropriately. If remaining in person, these safety issues need to be addressed. Families should be allowed to switch to virtual now. Mark Grant is next. If elementary stays in person, classes need extra safety due to increased numbers in community, need appropriate distancing, 6 feet, not eating lunch in school since it requires removing masks, smaller class sizes. Symptoms may not appear for 2 weeks after holidays, need at least 2 weeks off. Also need time before holidays so kids don't take it from school to their families. So should stop now to decrease spread before Thanksgiving. Christine Campo is next. That is a repeat comment, as is the next. Jay Coda, please have a doctor on call next time you discuss medical circumstances. I just saw a notice come up. Did I skip 72? Let me go back.
There was no last name. It was anonymous.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, carrying forward then.
Yep.
Let's see. I was at Jay Coda. I'm sorry?
You're number 80. Oh, no.
Yeah, actually 79.
79, yeah.
Christine Campo, the mere fact you're basing decisions on the presumption of what parents and families will be doing over the holidays is absurd. Kids' education is dangling in the wind. And Krushka next, please consider allowing quarantine students to attend elementary class via Google Meet. This will improve cooperation from families with 6 kids. Not allowing elementary students to join the class virtually will increase people sending kids to school with sniffles. Patrick McGuire is next. This multi-tiered in and out again and again proposal is ridiculous. Superintendent and staff came up with a reasonable plan and parents have been planning for it for a week now. There's no way families can keep up with the madness you are now proposing. Hattie McGuire is next. This compromise is ridiculous. Be brave and follow the science. There have been constant outbreaks. Keep your students and teachers safe and move virtual through the holidays. Jennifer Bellag. What about the special ed self-contained in middle school? You had put them in with the elementary group, and now it sounds like they are lumped in the secondary and are remote now. And that is one we should be talking about when I'm sure Mr. Archibald will look into that. Elizabeth Lytle, having elementary go remote for 1 week after Thanksgiving and then come back isn't even giving people 14 days of not being around extended family members. Families are going to get together. So to only keep us out for a week and then bring us back for 2 weeks prior to Christmas break is just asking for more quarantined students, teachers, and classrooms. That means some of us, students and teachers, will have to quarantine during winter break. Elementary should be remote December 9th to January 11th to keep safe. Jennifer Gamori, can you send out a list of secondary classes available next semester in virtual pathway as was done for this semester prior to the November 24th deadline? Joseph Kaimig. Public school teachers are missing a great opportunity to prove themselves as essential. I would gladly vote for a pandemic bonus for those willing to keep face-to-face learning going. Our children's best interests are being overlooked and their future jeopardized. Don't assume you know already that people will not do the right thing over the holidays. Nan Houtman is next, expressing concern for the COVID plan that was voted on tonight for the elementary. Asking the students to go remote for 1 week, then come back in person is not going to provide the consistency the students need. The elementary going remote for only 1 week will not lower the spread of the virus. When students in our classrooms need to quarantine or go remote, they're out 2 weeks. Thank you for your time. Trevor Davey, why not just extend school? Craig Skalski, if middle school is going full remote, can we get rid of the block schedules? 2 hours is too long for one class, and some classes end early, which means they're being taught less than the normal schedule. Can school start later than 7:30 a.m.? Why do students need to start at the early time if no in-person instruction? I also recommend bringing back students after 3 weeks state medical order if cases in district plateau or decline. And Elizabeth Van Steenskist, I think that the first plan that was presented was the best plan, going remote for all January until January 8th. I'm okay with you trying to give the elementary kids in-person learning until Thanksgiving. However, the back and forth in December seems too choppy. I also don't want my child in the building 2 weeks before Christmas, and remote allows my child to keep learning during December. I do not agree with the elementary plan that was approved tonight. Please go remote for even the youngest learners. And that concludes our comments.
All right, thank you. Next up, item 11 is correspondence. We have 2 resignations. We wish them well. Item 12 are our meeting dates, and item 13 is board comments. Mr. Clark, did you make it back? I know you got kicked out for a minute. You want to start us off? Maybe he didn't make it back. Okay, Mr. Dashner.
I've got nothing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hertel? Technical difficulties?
Sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute. It was, again, another interesting meeting. I'm glad we didn't go till 2:30 in the morning. I think we had some healthy debate, some healthy conversation. I do wish that everybody has a happy Thanksgiving coming up. Please, everybody be safe, stay healthy, and have lots of Zoom Thanksgiving Day family time. Thank you.
Mrs. Hanshaw, I did make it back.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. You can go right ahead, Mr. Clark.
I heard the public comments, but unfortunately that *6 is a tough one to work.
That's good to know.
So I can understand why people don't chime in when they're supposed to. So no, I want to applaud the board for working out a compromise this evening. This is obviously a very emotionally charged issue for the whole community. And I also would like to address the administration, if I could, that this might be a prime example of maybe holding off on sending the administrative orders down to the buildings and the individual classrooms until the board has made a decision. I think we've got a lot of parents now that are going to be totally confused with all the communication that has already gone out, and now we're changing it. So that's just one I would like to wave a caution flag in the future. Other than that, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abate.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say something about the original plan, and I don't want it to be misconstrued because when we make a decision as a group, we back each other, and I would go to the mat for everybody on this panel because these are great people that are here for the best interest of students and families in this community, and they come and they do this for that reason and that reason alone. So I have nothing but respect for all of you, and I don't want you to take anything the wrong way, but because I do support the compromise we came up with, but I'm really nervous. Because I do think it ultimately the original plan was the safest. And that makes me nervous for our staff and for our students and for our families heading into the break. And and so it's really going to be super important. And it's not that you need to, be lectured by a local school board or anything, but it's just, it's super important that we all take things seriously in the next coming weeks. And especially, especially during, when we get to those days where we are about to come back, we have to watch our kids for symptoms. We have to err on the side of abundance of caution. If it's a sniffle, if it's a cough, if it's whatever, you just have to stay home. There's no way we can get through all of this if we can't agree to do those things. And I do believe that we can. You don't need to hear that from me. People are out there and will do those things. But I'm a little nervous for the district. I think we can make it through. I think we can get through the holiday season and get on our feet without those interruptions. As we head into the winter, hopefully we'll be okay. I want to thank you, Mr. Tell, for jumping out there and trying to help us hammer something out, because I know I just sort of rambled a lot and I clearly have been very conflicted tonight. So that was helpful. But I wanted to say I appreciate, Mr. Archibald, you coming out there and putting out to the community, as ambitious and cautious a plan as you could, because I know that you're there in that office every single day for kids, and felt very strongly that that putting us remote would be the right call. So I thank you for that. And that's all that I have. I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving.
All right, Mr. Schwegler.
I think that's one of the things I've come to really appreciate about this board, is something Tony just touched on, and it's that we can have a very respectful dialogue, even though we might not have an initial agreement upon a big decision. And through that dialogue, we can come up with a solution that we can all feel comfortable about, comfortable enough about. So I just want to say, as Tony mentioned, that I respect the professionalism that you all bring to these meetings. I do want to thank Mr. Archibald for bringing together that plan to get this conversation going. I really respect the decisions that you have to make to guide this district, and hopefully we're doing enough to support you in those decisions. Other than that, be safe with the upcoming holidays, and that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Sure. I'll echo what Mr. Abate and Mr. Schwegler said. Much appreciation to the discussion that we had today. We can agree to disagree, but I would also say that I have everybody else's back. I think we're doing as best we can in a difficult situation. Have a good Thanksgiving. I appreciate the immense amount of work everybody on staff in our district has been doing. It's up to us now to bring those numbers down so that we don't have to worry about this. Thanks.
Thank you. Reiterate what everyone has said. I do really appreciate the board, really having really good, thorough conversations and listening to each other, and also listening and respecting the opinion of administration and their expertise. Our administration in our district has done everything we've asked of them since March 13th. They've gone above and beyond, and we're asking a lot of them with this plan. I know teachers are nervous. I know families are nervous, but we will continue doing the best we can. And hopefully everyone will do their part, and we'll get through this. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Hot. Jinx.
Moved by Mr. Schwegler, support by Mr. Abate. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Sure, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Tell.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
Mr. Hanshaw.
Yes. That is a motion adjourned. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Stay well, everyone.